Welcome back to the Casey Reynolds Radio Show here on FM 103.7 KFQD. Now, you remember last week was SCOTUS week. The Supreme Court handing down a bunch of rulings. And joined via the Newsmaker line with us right now is Jim Minnery from the Alaska Family Council and Alaska Family Action. How are you doing, sir?
Good. Good morning to you.
Now, before we get started, we're going to dive into what the Supreme Court decisions were, how they affect things, how your group is going to respond, what's this going to mean to Alaskans. But first, let me try to be peacemaker if I can here for a minute, Jim. I want to bring peace between you, gay groups, the ACLU, all these guys fighting. And so let me ask you this. If I were to find a venue renowned for its ability to bring sometimes angry warring factions together in a way that builds camaraderie while allowing you to air differences in sometimes a funny way, would you be willing to join? And I'm just going to throw this peacemaking plan right on the table. I'm going to call it the Casey Reynolds Radio Show Fantasy Football Plan. If I were to put together a fantasy football league and could get you, the ACLU, and maybe some folks from Mad Myrna's, some different grade groups to join, would you be down with that?
Well, as long as
are you going to negotiate for a pick?
Paying.
Are you going to negotiate for a first-round pick? Like you want the first pick so you can get Adrian Peterson or something?
To tell you the truth, I think it's great that you lead off this conversation with that, because I truly believe that what the Supreme Court did in their ruling last week was that they said the states now more than ever have the right to determine what it is that's best for children and how they can define marriage. And so I think not only is that a good idea, I think we have an obligation to dialogue and get together and discuss this in a winsome and educational way, so folks can hear and kind of get through the epitaphs or the slogans that everyone seems to throw out there that we're all a bunch of bigots. And Scalia said that very clearly: either you're with us or you're a hater. So I think that that's a misconception, and the more we can get together and dialogue, I think the better.
Now how do you feel about that? Because I know a lot of people have, because you're sort of the face of Alaska Family Action, Alaska Family Council, the socially conservative family values group here in the state, that a lot of people treat you with a great deal of vitriol based on the work you're doing. How do you deal with that? How do you treat that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a weighty thing in some ways, but I think, it's not like it's any, revelation that has occurred or does occur, with issues that come up. I mean, I got into this for, kind of with all eyes open. I knew that was going to take place. I've seen it in the past with all sorts of other folks who have taken stands on issues, not just on our issues, but on any issue. I mean, that you take a public stance, in the marketplace, and you're going to get beat up, and that's okay. I enjoy the good battle, and I think oftentimes, though, the folks that are vitriolic on either side are the ones that are hurting themselves as opposed to us. You have to be able to stand on what you think is principle and truth, and that doesn't bother me really at all. Sometimes it gets a little ugly, and that's okay. My role is to be able to try to get to compete in the marketplace of ideas, let people understand both sides of an issue and make their decisions. So it's never personal to me. It's just about ideas.
So what was your take on last week? The Supreme Court handed down a pair of decisions that on gay marriage, which gay groups were celebrating roundly as this massive victory. But in reading some of the stuff you're sending out, it sounded like maybe Alaska Family Council is saying, well, hold on here. This isn't necessarily the knockdown. This isn't the knockout blow for traditional marriage that it may look like. What is your take on what the Supreme Court said and what that's going to mean for Alaska?
Well, I think the statement that you've heard about proof or news of my death is premature. Whoever came up with that, I can't remember who it is now. I think that applies to these two cases. I mean, more than what the Supreme Court did, I think it's important for Alaskans to understand what it didn't do. I mean, the bottom line is that we still have 50 states that whose marriage laws remain the same after the court's decision. We have 38 states that currently have a law defining marriage as a union of a man and a woman, and those are still in place. Is there going to be further litigation? Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But I guess what Alaskans need to know is that Kennedy, who wrote the majority opinion, I think more than anything, a lot of folks are saying that he actually strengthened the right of states to determine what's best for their individual states.
And so how is this going to affect Alaska? Because we do have an amendment to our state constitution that was passed by voters that defines marriages between a man and a woman. So how does that affect us?
Well, it doesn't affect us, other than saying there's basically two parts of DOMA. I mean, so the two cases were Prop 8 and DOMA. DOMA basically is made up of a definition for purposes of federal benefits. And so those folks that are in the Army or dealing with Social Security or federal employees in the state, they are now requiring the federal government to recognize them as married couples that deserve those benefits. But the second part of DOMA, which is, in our view, is probably more important, is that it protects states from having to recognize marriages outside of Alaska. So folks go to Washington or any other state that now recognizes same-sex marriage, they come back to Alaska because of Kennedy's ruling. We don't have to now recognize that marriage. What it does mean, though, is that the court has said now more than ever, states have to keep the debate going. So we have to, in my view, because we have the luxury of being the first state in the country of defining marriage as a union between a man and a woman, we now more than ever have to make the case of why we did that in the first place. I think that goes across the country. I mean, there's a reason why states have an interest and a right to give kids the best possible environment in which to thrive. And in our view, those of us who espouse the social conservative view, traditional marriage viewpoint, natural marriage viewpoint, say that the social science is facts are very evident. Kids thrive best, future generations thrive best when they have a mother and a father.
Okay, I want to get into that. We need to go to a break, but if you can hold through the break, when we come back, I want to get into some of that. I want to have you explain that to me, what exactly the social science evidence is of that. We'll be back with Jim Minnery from Alaska Family Council and Alaska Family Action. We'll also take your thoughts, your calls on what is the impact of the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage, the twin decisions last week on that, and how does it affect Alaska, and how do we go forward at 522-0750, 1-888-90-9750 here on the Casey Reynolds Radio Show on FM 103.7 KFQD.